The US President Donald Trump has implored Russia to stop its deadly attacks on Ukraine as sensitive negotiations take place to reach a deal to end the long-running war. At least a dozen people were killed and almost 100 others were injured in the biggest assault on the capital, Kyiv, in almost a year. After criticising the Ukrainian president for refusing to surrender to Russian-occupied Crimea as part of a possible peace agreement, Mr. Trump insists he is not favouring Vladimir Putin and is lobbying him to come to the table.
He wouldn't be talking right now. He's talking, and we're putting a lot of pressure. I think he wants to make a deal. We're going to find out very soon, but it takes two to tango, and you have to have Ukraine want to make a deal too, and they're being hit very hard.
What concessions has Russia offered up thus far to get to the point where you're closer to peace?
Stopping the war, stopping taking the whole country. Pretty big concession.
Rescue teams are working at more than a dozen sites across Kyiv, searching for signs of life in the rubble. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says preliminary information shows Russia used a ballistic missile manufactured in North Korea in the strikes. He says if that's confirmed, it's further proof of the criminal nature of the alliance between Russia and Pyongyang. Kyiv residents cleaning up their damaged apartments are growing tired of living in a war zone.
How much more? How much more? What else do you want? Every time something like this happens, I always ask this question: how much more? Why isn't it possible to follow the path of peace in sorting out the relations and save people?
Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014 after a disputed referendum and launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The Kremlin now controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory. The peninsula changed hands from Russia to Ukraine during Soviet rule in 1954. Kyiv is rejecting any plan to give up any territory to Moscow, but many Crimean residents say they feel a part of Russia.
It is okay, because smart people understand that Crimea has never been purely Ukrainian. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. It so happened that it was not quite correctly conveyed to Ukraine. Ukraine barely invested there. We had broken roads here. In general, Crimea has changed a lot for the better when it returned to its homeland as part of Russia.
The Ukrainian president has cut short his trip to South Africa after Russia's latest attacks on Kyiv. He wants the US to put more pressure on the Kremlin, saying he doesn't see signs the talks are preventing Russian aggression, despite Kyiv's willingness to negotiate.
The fact that Ukraine is ready to sit down at the negotiating table after a ceasefire, after a complete ceasefire with the terrorists who organised all this on our land, exclusively on our land, is a great compromise.
In excerpts of an interview to be broadcast on CBS this weekend, the Russian foreign minister says the US and Moscow are working together to end the war.
The President of the United States believes, and I think rightly so, that we are moving in the right direction. The statement by the President mentions a deal, and we are ready to reach a deal, but there are still some specific points, elements of this deal which need to be fine-tuned.